Right, now what came to mind when I first saw this puzzle was for me to set up a system of equations that would allow me to calculate the values that are required to make this grid balance. So what I did was just mark out each block as x1, x2, x3, x4 because the values inside the squares are unknown. So, and I also thought this 2 hour limit, time limit, was just a ridiculous amount of time to be spent on this small problem. So I guess maybe somewhere around plus minus 5 minutes it's adequate to calculate these values. So what I did next was extract all the equations from the grid. The first one being x1, x2 equal 8, and then x2 and x3 should give me an 8, and then the x4 minus the x3 should give me a 6, and then the last one being 1, x1, x4 should give me a 13. Then I named each equation as 1, 2, 3, and 4. So after getting these equations, I solved them simultaneously, but I had to pair them up. Like the first two equations, I paired them up, and then the last two equations. The reason for that was because the first two equations, they share a common variable as well as the last two equations. So after pairing them up, I actually calculated for the x2s in terms of x1 and x3. So this is what I did. X2 is equal to 8 minus x1, and x2 is equal to 8 minus x3. Then I marked this one as equation 1a and 2a. 1a because was derived from equation 1, and 2a because was derived from equation 2. Now I can solve them simultaneously. So x2 is equal to this, x2 is equal to this. So in other words, 1a is equal to 2a. So in other words, equation 1a is equal to 2a. So by equating these two equations, you're going to end up with x1 equal to x3. So I just left it at this, but then this statement is going to be useful after solving for the last two equations. So I applied the same logic with the first two equations. Calculate your x4s in terms of x3 and x1. So this is what I did. X4 is equal to 6 plus x3. X4 is equal to 13 minus x1. Then I marked it as 3a as well as 4a, and then before solving these equations, you remember this statement, right? It says x1 is equal to x3. So this is what I did. 13 minus x3, because this x1 is equal to x3. So what I'm trying to do here is actually I want to end up with an equation with just one variable. So I can use 3a instead and replace this x3 with the x1, but then I decided to use the 4a equation to do that. So from here I equated the two equations. So 3a is equal to 4a because of this common variable. So from here I get a 6 plus x3 equal to 13 minus x3. So from here I calculate the x3 value. This is a linear equation, so by solving for x3 I get 2 x3 equal to 13 minus 6, so x3 is equal to 7 over 2. Now from this statement we see that the x3 is equal to x1, so the value for the x3 is the same for the value of x1, so the x1 and the x3 will have the same value. So now that I calculated the value for x1 and x3, I just plug them in here. 7 over 2, 7 over 2. Now I need to calculate x2 and x4, and then the remaining two can be calculated from equation 1a and 2a for x2's, and then 3a and 4a will give us x4. So you can choose either equation from the above. So I used equation 1a for the x2 value. I got a 8 minus x1. x1 is equal to a value of 7 over 2. So subtracting this, I got a wait, what did I get? I got a 9, because 2 times 8, I get a 16. 16 minus 7, yes, I got a 9 over 2. And then for the x4 value, I used the third equation, the 3a equation. So x4 is going to be equal to 6 plus x3. x3 is equal to 7 over 2. So is equal to 2 times 6. I get a 12. 12 plus 7, I'm going to get a 19 over 2. So now that I calculated all the values for my variables or the unknowns, I calculated the unknowns. Now I'm going to plug them into the grid again. So now x4 is equal to 19 over 2, and then the x2, it's 9 over 2. It's 9 over 2. So yeah, this is how it's done. I think I did this in under 7 minutes. 2 hours is a lot of time, bro. But anyway, by subtracting a 19 over 2 with a 7 over 2, you should get a 6. You can just double check using your smartphone calculator or your scientific calculator or whatever. So now if you add a 9 over 2 and a 7 over 2, you should get an 8, and adding these two, you should get an 8, and subtracting, you should get that. So yeah, but I also believe that there could be another method, an easier one, or a quicker one, a much simpler way to solving this. But then if you try to solve this grid just using a trial and error method, it's going to take you a while. So I think this is much more, well, setting up a system of equations, it's much more organized and easier to work out this problem. So yeah, thanks for watching. And then if you have a better solution, just leave it in the comment section. Sharp.